Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to Decree of Dominion podcast with your host, Darklaw. Welcome to episode 6 of the Decree and Dominion, Darklaw Dominion Mental Health series. Very excited to bring to you a special guest here today, Mr. Dave Miller. So I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. How are you doing,
Hey,
Dave?
I'm fantastic. Thank you here for having me today. Appreciate it. I
Appreciate having you.
Yeah, you and I spoke, and I know that what I do is a little bit off topic for what it is that you focus on, but there's also a direct correlation, definitely, between the side of domestic violence that you talk about, the mental health that goes with it. Specifically for me, I specialize in education for parents and youth around the areas of internet child exploitation, everything kind of that happens in that world, as well as education for parents and youth around human trafficking awareness.
Awesome, awesome. So appreciate having you on today. And so if you're out there viewing, again, domestic violence in general, but especially the child exploitation side of things is very kind of a hidden topic. You know, everybody sees it or everybody notices it. If you're viewing out there, I know you've seen the different trafficking movies. You've seen the different books, the different TV shows. Law and Order is one of them. Special Victim Units is actually one of my favorite shows. Seen countless of hurt stories, seen movies, seen it on television, seen Facebook posts, things of that nature, and I just feel that it's one of those things that, again, obviously is a parent in the world, but I feel like a lot of people are don't have the courage to speak on it, and so I definitely, again, want to commend you for being one of those to, kind of step up into the battlefield of educating folks on childhood exploitation. And so we'll get it started here. One of the first questions I have for you, Dave, is, how did you kind of get into the child exploitation education space? What kind of promoted you or what kind of inspired you to want to help others and educate others on that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my background prior to doing this was in law enforcement, about 15 years spent in that area. When I finished, I was working in a street crimes and human trafficking role as a human trafficking investigator. And I knew what I was doing was really based around reactive, um, a reactive ability to help somebody. It was very difficult to proactively locate and find victims of things like human trafficking that were willing to work with you because they wanted out of that world. And so you're kind of left in this reactive state where you can only help somebody when somebody comes to you actively looking for help. And on top of that, too, I saw a direct correlation between it's not just adults who are being trafficked; it's teenagers, it's youth, it's children. And with that, I knew that there was also that darker side that led to internet child exploitation and children being videoed, children having their images taken, and those sold in the online world. Something that I've coined as digital trafficking now. It doesn't just have to be where somebody goes and secures or buys your services, right? If people's images are being traded and somebody's benefiting monetarily from that, they're being trafficked. So I see the way in which to um, really combat the issue in a proactive way is providing easy to access, easy to understand education for parents, education for youth, where we teach youth in a way that feels good for them, that they feel empowered to, become good, healthy digital citizens. And that's kind of what led me down this path. Was I saw a gap there that needed to be addressed, and putting this education in parents, because dealing, and being a part of families whose children have been exploited online or somebody's been trafficked, it's a heartbreaking story. And I just think more needs to be done around that world, and it begins with education.
Awesome, awesome. I definitely appreciate you. Again, commending you for being one of those to, step into that battlefield and, have the courage. Like I said, it doesn't, you know, a lot of people don't have the courage to not only see a problem, but also, you know, work towards the steps on, again, you said a good word. You said proactive and reactive. And I think in life, especially when it comes to child exploitation, domestic violence, mental health in general. A lot of us are reactive. we kind of wait for they always have that saying or that coined phrase of what if it was you, or what do you do if it's
Yeah.
you? And I just think that that's more like you said, the reactive of you know you always want to say, build your roof before it rains. So I
Yeah.
definitely commend you for, empowering, parents, not only just the parents, but also the youth as well.
Well, and you brought up a really good point at the start. You said, you see it in the movies, you see it on Facebook pages, you see it in the media and all these things. And to no fault of their own, though, general public truly thinks, well, this is only something that happens if I'm seeing it in the media. Right? They don't realize how unreported it is. How many families, if something happens to their child online, families are quick to delete everything and just say, look, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to share this. We don't know who did it to you. We're not going to go to law enforcement. We're not going to whatever. And so children then are left with the void because something hasn't been done about it. That leads to a massive fallout, which leads to mental health, substance abuse issues, anxiety, depression, youth suicide. So many things there that can come of it. And the general public and so many people I've worked with in the past, or parents, are like, God, I had no idea how prevalent this was. I had no idea that this was going on. I had no idea that it could be going on right next door to me or at that hotel that I always drive by on my way home from work, whatever it may be. And that's what we need to raise more awareness around it. When parents just take I hope it doesn't happen to me, or I wish and hope, kind of the wish and hope defense that I call it. That's not a viable defense because it knows no demographics, it knows no race, it doesn't know an age, it doesn't know a gender, right? It can happen to absolutely any time, child or adult, and it has a massive, devastating impact on families.
Awesome. No, and again, to your point, where when I was talking about the movies and things of that nature, if you're viewing the podcast here, this episode here today, I want you to think about, I always say it's the little things. If you're a woman, how many times have, back in high school, we always had that first love or that crush. How many times do we, share, explicit pictures with each other, just, we're young and dumb, take pictures or things of that nature. How many times have you guys break up or fall out and, they're like, if you, don't leave me alone, I'm going to, post your pictures on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, or I'm going to, or just the uncomfortable security of, hey, I sent this guy I thought I was in love with, or even guys, I sent this girl that, I thought was going to be my wife or what have you, these, pictures. And, that I don't even know if they would deleted them. I don't know what happened. And, somebody else has access to my sacred space. And it's just little things like that. Um, and I want people to know that, that is a part of, child exploitation or exploitation in general. And it's just the little things, you might not think of it with, oh, well, he's just mad because we broke up, or, but, that, let's say, he posts that on a group chat with your best friends or something like that. We kind of, like you said, you've seen it in Bully, you've seen it in different movies, cyberbullying, things of that nature. You've seen it in the movies, the Disney Channel, stuff like that. And, again, it's prevalent in the world, but how many stories like that happens, around the world where it's not, in a movie or not, like to your point, reported to law enforcement, reported to the news, or half the time parents don't even know their children. One day it's like, well, why is my child depressed? Why is my child suicidal? It's, little thing. It starts with little things like that, they never told their dad, or they never told their parents or siblings. And, it kind of just snowballs and kind of builds
Yeah,
up.
for sure. Well, and like you said there, right? They never told their parent or never told somebody about it. And the reality is, when it comes to the online world for youth, less than 15% of parents actually know what their children are doing online. So, parents might be like, oh, yeah, no, my kid plays Roblox and they're on Snapchat or TikTok or whatever, but they really don't know what they're actually doing online. They don't know who they're chatting with. They don't know really what games they're playing, or they don't know if they're into inappropriate things online. And that's what really makes it scary. And that's where parents are just like, well, I just hope that my kid doesn't do it. I've told them once not to do something. Never take a photo of yourself and send it to somebody else. And it doesn't work like that for kids. Like adults are easily manipulated online, let alone a child who's still trying to develop uh, the internal controls needed to not do something or not kind of go down the click hole or the rabbit hole online, right? Like parents need to understand there's over 5 million online predators that exist today. 500,000 of them are active every single day. And an online predator doesn't just get on there and make a connection and say, "Hey, I'm talking to Dave today," and within, minutes saying, "Hey, Dave, send me a picture of yourself." They spend months grooming this person, setting them up, building trust, building a relationship, finding out, a weak point or an in for that child to say, um, oh, you're in trouble with your mom and dad. Oh, like, tell me all about it, right? They'll build that connection with somebody to the point where they eventually then ask for that photo. And maybe they share another photo with them of somebody else that they've extorted. Say, "Hey, this is me, right? I showed you mine, show me yours." And the second that child sends that image, it's game over. That's when they all of a sudden are like, "Yep, this is who I really am, and this is what you need to do. You now need to either send me more content, more videos, more images of yourself. You need to send me money. And if you don't, Dave, I've been on your Facebook. I know who all your friends are. I know who your family is. I'm going to send this picture to everybody."
Awesome, awesome. And again, for those viewing, he said 15%. Again, that's 15% of parents in the world don't know what their child is doing online. Again, only, 15%
Actually know what
know
their kids are doing.
know
85%
what they're
don't.
doing. Again, like you said, 15% actually know, like for sure, hey, he's doing homework. He closes the laptop, goes to bed, and wakes up and goes back to school. 85%, again, think about all the children, all the parents, in the world. 85% of the population has no idea what their children do online. That's a mind blowing stat right there.
Yeah, scary.
85%. And so, again, to his point, again, it's that little thing that starts with the grooming. If you're viewing, think about, I know there's a funny show out there that's been around for a year called Catfish. But some stuff like that, you think you connect with, online, whether it's, we back then we used to have Skype, or Omegle, where you could video chat with like random strangers and stuff like that. And, back then, we were, teenagers, kids, it might be late at night, parents are asleep, they got to go to work in the morning. You're just on the laptop in your room, just browsing. But, looking back, especially being a father of children now, you know, I can see like, you know, that stuff's not okay. That's, thank God it didn't happen to me, but, that kind of could start into
Yeah,
and be a part of.
you've referenced a couple times now, having that laptop in your room and shutting it down and go to bed, or you have it in your bedroom. That's one of the easiest things that we teach parents is don't allow kids to have devices in isolated areas of the home, because when they do, they're a lot less apt to have the controls needed to, if they're invited into a chat or somebody says something, to stop from actually doing what that person's asking. Omegle, you just said Omegle just was shut down, or they voluntarily closed down. I think it was about 4 months ago, after being outed for youth being exploited online and being connected to online child predators because it's a stranger chat. You don't know who you're connecting to. We've gone through and tested this multiple times where we've gone on to stranger chat sites. We take on the persona of being a youth, male or female, and usually within the first three conversations, somebody is portraying to be an adult, and quickly finds it okay and acceptable that they're talking to a youth, and then within minutes of that happening, they're trying to test the boundaries of a conversation turning sexual.
And so with that being said, again, like you said, it's to the little things, don't not letting your children have access to private, and it starts young. I know, some parents, they might have, 5, 6 year olds with tablets and just different things. Make sure you have parental controls on that thing. Make sure you limit, I would say limit the amount of time, your child spends on those devices. have a cutoff times. Hey, 7 o'clock, tablets in my room, you know, behind, and similar to like a firearm, you wouldn't want your children to touch, your firearm, lock the tablet away, until the next day when, you allow them to get back on it, you know, go through, make sure you have security for, your electronics that you allow your children to have access to. And
Yeah.
so, with that being said, you know, what are some tips that you would give parents, to proactively prepare, kind of like, you know, self defense, but, proactively prepare
Yeah.
or things to know when dealing with child
Yeah, for sure.
exploitation?
Well, you just touched on one there. The tablets go away at a certain time, and what we call that in our education is have a designated bedtime charging station where all devices go to at a certain time, and that's where they charge. That's where they stay. It keeps them out of the rooms, for sure. But the biggest thing that we, educate on, or not the biggest thing, but for that piece of advice is, when I was growing up, maybe my parents, if they did at all, didn't have to have the, quote unquote sex talk with me until maybe I was 13 or 14 years of age. The reality is now, because kids are so much younger with devices in their hands, on gaming platforms, on social media, that talk needs to happen with kids like when they're like 6 or 7 years old, because you also have to talk to them that, hey, there's bad guys in the online world. They don't always have your best interest in mind. They may be on there trying to harm you, and this is what it's going to kind of look like. So parents just have to develop that atmosphere of trust with their kids. They have to have difficult conversations with them. It's not something that can be avoided. Otherwise, you're just into that wishing and hoping strategy. I mean, there's countless stories out there where children 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, they're playing Roblox online, they're on something different. Somebody starts up a conversation with them. And it's as simple as, if I said to you and you're a 7-year-old kid on a game, you're like, hey, I think we might live near each other. What city do you live in? Right. And you're like, oh, I live in, near Detroit, Michigan. Uh, they're like, oh, me too. I just live like, in the one city next door to that, right? Maybe we should get together sometime, right? And it's just that simple. And if parents are avoiding this conversation with kids, if they're giving them unfiltered access to these platforms or to these games without parental controls in place, without looking over their child's shoulder every once in a while to seeing what they're up to, without having conversations about basically saying like, hey, like, let me check your conversation history here. Let me see. Especially the younger kids are. And I know this is something parents go through. They have a difficult time balancing privacy and protection. When kids are that much younger, like when they're between like 7 and 12 years old, it's like your device is my device, or my device is your device. Like it goes both ways. And I get to see everything and anything on it. There are no secrets in this family, right? Like I get to see it. As they get a little bit older, that's when you start to pull back the strings a little bit. You give your kids a little bit more leniency. You allow them to kind of, sometimes I say the best lessons are hard lessons, but you don't want it to be one at the cost of their safety. But you got to give kids a little bit of rope to show that they can build and have that trust with you, because you're preparing them kind of fly the nest. Eventually, by the time they're 17 or 18 years old, they're out, they're living on their own. They have to be able to know how to make decisions on their own. They have to know about what the dangers are in the online world. And we don't educate parents to a point where, like, the goal is not to have them go take technology away from kids. Kids need it now for education. They need it for future work ambitions. They need it for content creation. They need it to communicate in this world. Technology is needed. So rather than taking it away from them, it's like, let's prepare them what to do if something happens, right? And there's no guarantee. Like we never provide that guarantee of take our education. I guarantee you nothing will ever happen to your child. We also educate on, if something does happen, here's the steps that you need to take in order to prevent this from going further.
And so I appreciate you saying that. You said a lot of good things. One of the things that correlates with all the tips that you gave is two things: one, accountability, and two, awareness. As a parent, those are two things that you just have to have within the household when you're raising kids. Is that awareness of, like you said, hey, your device is my device, you know. And sometimes as parents, so sometimes we're tired from work, or we just, sometimes you want to break and you're just like, hey, here, you know, you've been good in school. Hey, just go ahead and go play on the tablet, and you kind of just, play your music or, you know, do your thing as an adult. But you just, like I said, you got to have that awareness of, you know, making sure you're checking in with your kids. Hey, what are you doing? Or, because again, to your point earlier through the episode is, kids still have to develop that mindset of, hey, just because you tell your 6 year old, hey, don't get on Omegle, for example, doesn't mean 2 hours later they're not going to click on Omegle just to out of curiosity. You
Kids are
know,
forgetful. They'll say, "Oh,
um,
I forgot you
one
told me
of
that. Oh, I didn't know that's what you meant." Or they just do it out of curiosity, thinking, right? Like, I mean, how many times growing up did we, parents tell you don't do something and you go do it anyways because you got to figure it out on your own. Um, and it's dangerous out there, right? That's what leads, things to happening.
and then you also said another good point that you made was also um, that charging station, having a centralized hub of, hey, you know, it's 7:30, it's almost bedtime. Hey, no more technology. Hey, it's time to brush your teeth, use the restroom,
That's
lights
right.
out, time to go to sleep. And so also sticking stern to that, not wavering from your again, it goes back to your accountability, is not wavering from, your instruction and um your parameters, if you will, because everything, and one thing I learned, just from a military family, everything in life has certain restrictions. Yes, we're free in America, but every action has a consequence or adverse reaction, and so we just have to make sure as parents that um, we not only hold our children accountable, but also hold ourselves accountable to holding our
Absolutely.
children accountable.
Absolutely. And if kids are curious
And
about that
so,
stuff, certain things like show them like, hey, I'm going to show you what a stranger chat site is. Okay, we've had the talk. Okay, I don't want you to be embarrassed by this, but let's go on a stranger chat site and I'm going to show you how easily this kind of stuff can happen. Right? It satisfies the kids' curiosity then, can show the kids like, hey, mom or dad, they're not crazy talking here. Like even I say to my kids, it's like you guys know more about technology than I do. Right? You guys teach me things on technology, but I know one thing more than what you do, and that's how to keep you safe online. So let's have like this common, respect for each other. You teach me things and I'll continue to teach you things. And we always communicate together about it.
awesome, awesome. So, again, like you said, just to go back to that stat you said earlier, 85% of the population has no idea what their children are doing online. Again, I just want that to stick with the viewers as we move forward through the episode. And so, with that being said, you know, what are some, you know, what are some things that you would tell a parent, if they've had, a situation happen, what are some tips on healing from, you know, your child coming, like, let's say your child comes to you, hey, I made a mistake, I sent somebody a picture and they're, you know, blackmailing me or, demanding a ransom or they'll release my images. How do you go about, you know, tips on learning from the mistake and,
Yeah,
kind of
for sure. So the
once
first thing,
something
because
has
I know
happened?
most parents' first reaction is take their kid's device, delete all the accounts, delete everything in relation to what's happened, right? So first of all, do not delete anything. Okay, it needs to be reported to police, and here's why: if it's not for yourself, report it to the police because the same person that's doing it to your child is doing it to hundreds and hundreds of other kids out there. Reporting it could help identify the person and it could save a child's life. That's number one. But don't delete anything because as soon as you delete some of that data, sometimes it becomes irretrievable. It's hard to get. It's hard then to find the person responsible for this. The second thing is don't shame and blame them. Okay. Yeah, they made a mistake, but so did we. And I asked parents this. I'm like, growing up before the internet, like I grew up for the first 12 years of my life without the internet. And even, the first 5 or 6 after that, like it didn't have, or the first 10 years after that, it didn't have what it has today. And I remind parents, I'm like, if you had at your fingertips what our kids have access to every single day now, what kind of trouble would you have got into? Okay. So let's not shame the kids. Let's not blame them. There's got to be consequences, right? Hey, we've talked about this. We know that you shouldn't be doing that. There's always going to be a consequence. Kids need to learn that, right? If I do something in life whether it's breaking a rule, whether it's something with employment, something with education. If it goes against what I'm supposed to be doing, there could be consequences to that. There's drinking and driving. There's a consequence to that. There's, I can give you hundreds of examples, right? There's always a consequence. You have to be there to support them. You have to actually, instead of, going that troubled route first, is like kind of congratulating them on coming to you. Because if you go the opposite way and you want to freak out and take everything away and do all these other things, next time something happens, they're not going to come to you because they're like, hey, that didn't feel good. I didn't like getting yelled at. I didn't like getting screamed at. I didn't like my devices being taken away from me for a month at a time and all these other things, right? And my parents just made me feel even worse about doing it, telling me how stupid I was and you should have never done that and you know better. And we talked about it. They're not going to come to you the next time something goes wrong. And that's the worst thing that can happen because when they try to hide it, they dig that hole even deeper. And that's when things can get worse and worse, right? So support them on it. Tell them you're proud of them coming forward to you. Proud of you for doing this. There is going to be consequences, just so you know. And we've already, talked to your kids ahead of time, like, hey, just so you know, if you do this, right, there's always going to be a consequence. And follow through on that, but then say, like, we have to report this. That's the only way that we can try to find out who did it. And if you follow those steps and not delete anything, nobody online, we call them on, especially when we're teaching kids, they're just bad guy lies. And nobody online is going to reach through. They're not going to come harm you. They're not going to come kill your family or kill your dog or, do anything else like that. Threats that we've seen people make to kids online. Those are all just manipulative tactics to try to get somebody to comply with their demands, right? Know that you're safe. Know that somebody's not going to harm you. Stop the conversation immediately and go report it.
Awesome, awesome. And so a lot of good things you said there. Again, report it. I think a lot of times we kind of try to sweep things under the rug, you know, especially when it's, deemed an embarrassment to the family or deemed, you should, like you said, something good, you should know better, I've told you 1,000 times, we don't do that. Like, why would you do that? And again, to your point, don't shame your kids, because then they lose that trust. And like you said, they're not going to go back to, next time something happened. And it doesn't even have to be in relation to the situation that happened. It could be at school. They're getting bullied. They're getting harassed at school. They're getting picked on. They got bad grades in the class. It could just be little things. And then, as time goes on, you're like, well, why does my kid not talk to me? I had no idea. Again, back to my original point. Again, I had no idea my kid was depressed. I had no idea, my kid was suicidal or, stressed out or had anxiety, things of that nature. And it's, situations like what you mentioned where, make the mistake of scolding our kids for mistakes we would have made, if we
Absolutely.
were in the same position, if not worse.
Yeah.
And so in your experience, with, coaching and training parents and youth, what would you say is, the percentage of, I know we like I said, when with anything in education, you kind of have your people that, are receptive of the information, but also you have the people that are kind of like do their own thing or kind of push it. What percentage have you had of individuals that you think, understood what was taught and, was able to apply that to their
Um,
daily lives?
that's a good question. When people take our education, right, they take it, they get started with it. They're like, oh my God, I so need this in my life. My kids need this and everything like that. And we have a follow-up system when people start. It's funny how many people start it with good intentions and then they're like, oh, I know I got it like a month ago. I haven't started it yet. I know I need to, right? It's like anything. It's right. It's like, oh, I joined a gym, but I haven't gone yet. I got that membership 2 months ago, right? It's like we live in this reactive state society. People generally don't try to fix a problem until they have one rather than proactive. And it's like, well, let's fix a problem before it becomes a problem, right? Let's get into it. But I'd probably say about 70% of our parents get in. They at least take our first course. Okay, our first course, it's basic, it's online digital safety. It's about 65, 70 minutes in length. And it's a blanket, it's a coverall. And I tell parents, if you're only going to do one of our many courses that we have, do this. Okay, because then all of our sub courses that we have are deeper dive topics on the things that we cover in our course. So it's like, hey, if you want to understand online or real life predator luring and grooming tactics, take our course on that. If you want to understand the dangers of social media in a greater detail, take our course on that. If you want to learn how to implement technology in your house that can help, things like web filtering software, how to maximize using your router, take our courses on that. Our goal isn't to create parents who've got like a master's or a PhD in this. If I can raise your awareness by 30 or 40%, that's a win. And I can do that by you taking our one single course, our online digital safety course. Like I said, if that's all you do, you're going to have enough information at your fingertips to be able to implement practical strategies that you can use to protect your kids.
Awesome, awesome. And so, just like they have like college courses, you encourage the parents to read the syllabus.
That's right.
That first class is the syllabus. So just make sure you at least, go over the syllabus before you continue. And so, again, that's a good, number, definitely 70+% of parents, getting educated. And so, if you're kind of go back to your time with the human trafficking, law enforcement kind of things, you know, um, if you are able to share, what is the like when everybody does something. So for just with anything with podcasting or with career changes, everybody kind of has that it moment. At that time, what was the not necessarily too deep in detail, but what was like the case or the moment that you felt like, yes, this needs to be educated on. More people need
Honestly, it
to
wasn't it
shed light
wasn't
onto
that.
this.
When I became a police officer, I went through. You get trained like, how do I best explain this? You get exposure to in your onboarding and training all the different units that exist within a police service. Okay, you get exposed to um, everything. And when I was first met with the man at the time, the officer that did our internet child crimes investigations, and he showed me an investigation that he was actively working on where child's images were being taken and distributed online. That was when it hit me at that moment that it made me like I was, super new, super green to all of this. And it just made me feel so sick to my stomach what was going on. And I knew at that point in time, like that was the thing that impacted me and has stuck with me to this day. And it was honestly, that was like a 3-minute interaction that I had with this officer. Right, real quick. Hey, Dave, this is so and so. This is what he does. Hey, would you mind showing Dave something that you're working on so he better understands? And if he ever encounters this type of thing in his, in his day-to-day line of work, what does he do? And so he just sits there and shows me, yeah, this is what I'm working on, and pulls it up and just shows me to me like it was like, this is just what I do in my day. And it had such an impact on me that I knew then that I wanted to do more about it. It took me 15 years of working in that career to go, I want to be in a more proactive role when it comes to education in regards to this.
Awesome. Also, it's definitely a great, I definitely appreciate you sharing that. And so, like I said, throughout the episode, we kind of talked through tips and just different statistics on, the negative side of things. What's one part of your career that, as a positive takeaway that you had from working with these parents and children?
One really interesting positive takeaway, like a kind of end resolve to an investigation type of thing. You're saying?
Kind of both, like that, like the end result during investigation, but also, some people when they work with different individuals, they get kind of like, wow, this parent came to me and I really helped them or
Yeah,
something. Maybe it's something a parent
and
said or
I don't know,
something a
nothing
child
like
said.
that. Like perfectly stands out. But I know, I always took extra pride if I investigated anything like this on building the relationship with the child in a way that they didn't view um, what they did as a total negative thing because I don't know, I'm there to handle something in the moment. I'm not there when they told their mom and dad. I don't know how mom and dad reacted. I'm not there when I leave their house, and I don't know what mom and dad are going to say. So while I would walk parents more through the procedural steps of everything, making sure they had the tools and making sure that we would kind of carry things forward the way it was supposed to be, I always tried to leave the child with a different sense of impression, right? That they're okay, that they're safe, that they did the right thing on reporting this, or that their mom and dad, maybe mom and dad found out, maybe the child didn't go to mom and dad and say, this is what I've done. I had one once where a mom opened up the door to the basement, and their child had every single gaming system possible. They're about 13 years old. The basement was where the kid's bedroom was, and mom could hear a man's voice on the other end. And she went and talked to her kid, went and explored, good for mom on that, saying like, oh, hey, who's that? That's a much older voice than somebody that's your age. And the kid kind of downplayed it. Oh, it's just so-and-so. I just, I know him, play a game online. And they ended up being from Texas. And mom kind of pushed a little bit and found out that her kid had been having sexual conversations with this male. And so that's when we got called. And so the kid was like in shambles, in absolute tears when I got there, and pulled them aside and had a really good conversation with them. And they actually got them to admit to me that it's like, well, I actually been sending this person images of myself, nude photos of myself, and they're trying to meet me. They want me to meet them. For anybody that listens out there, I'm from originally from Ontario, Canada, right on the border of Michigan, where I'm from. And they're like, well, no, they want me to meet them in Detroit. They're willing to fly there. And, all I got to do is figure out a way, how can I get across the border to meet this person? And it just kind of unraveled. And we were actually able to, by securing all of their devices, identify who the male was that they were talking to. And this guy actually called in after I had made contact with him, because I had got his phone number from the child. And he actually called into my police detachment on a recorded line and asked, well, what's the penalty for somebody possessing nude images of a child? Right. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, this child, they sent me nude images of themselves, and I knew how old they were. Like, what's the penalty for that in Texas? I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm not, I'm from Canada. You're in Texas. I don't know what their laws are. And I'm like, I know their laws are tough on this stuff. And I was able to get more information from them. And then we ended up running a joint force operation, or, joint force investigation on this guy with the law enforcement agency in Texas, which resulted in an ultimate, him being arrested and charged for possession of child sexual abuse material. Which was just a really kind of cool to see, because, this kid at home could have totally shut down, not told me much. And, mom could have said, oh, I don't want anything done. And it just had a really cool rhythm to it right from the start, and building that relationship with the kid, and then, seeing a very successful resolve at the end of it.
Awesome, awesome. And again, that's, I believe that's due to your ability to, like you said, establish rapport with the child, you know, and again, for the parents out there viewing, um, don't accept the first. I always say with kids, don't accept the first answer as whatever. Like, oh, it's just some guy playing video games. All right, cool.
Right.
Well, go back to playing your game. I'll see you for dinner. Make sure every parent has that, innate ability, um, you kind of have that sense of, kind of like being psychic of, hey, you know what's going on with your
You
child.
do.
You can notice when
Yeah, you
something's
do know
off.
when something's
And
off. And,
so,
going back to your previous question, like, well, what other tips or advice would you give parents, right? And the one thing, if you're talking to your kids, don't ask them questions that are just going to get you a yes, no answer. Don't ask them questions that you're maybe trying to get more information while you're on a car ride, because you can't look at their body language. You can't see how their face is reacting. There's a lot of things you might miss. Here's an example. Did you have a really good sleepover? Yeah, it was good. Awesome. Right. And that's the end of the conversation, versus, how was the sleepover? What did you do? Who was there? Oh, they got a big brother. I didn't know he was there. Like, what's his name? Right. Was he around? Did he hang out with you guys? Like, what did you do? Where did everybody sleep? You can, begin to create more conversation. And the more you do it, the more your kids come to expect that. Right. And you'll be able to know, you'll be able to tell by their body language or by your own gut feeling if something's off, or there might be something more to it that you need to explore.
Awesome, awesome. And so again, for those viewing out there, just make sure, when you're talking to your children, like you mentioned, like David said here today, establish that respect, establish that rapport with your child. Don't ask yes or no questions, ask open-ended questions to where they have to give, an accurate response and have to, expand the conversation. And so, with that said, like I said, it's been a pleasure, speaking with you, Dave. You have any like last minute tips for parents or even children out there? And then also, where can parents and
Yeah,
children
for sure.
find your
Last
educational
minute
material?
tips. Oh boy, lots of them. Don't let complacency set in. Don't let it. Don't ever think it's going to not happen to you, because this is something that doesn't know demographics. Especially with, I said, 500,000 online predators are active every single day, and they're going to leverage AI and technology and chatbots. They don't even have to talk to your kid anymore, right? We teach parents that, online predators, they're patient. They don't need to win every single time. But parents, you have to win every single time. So just have those conversations and foster that trust with your kids and be there to support them, because they're growing up in a completely different world than what we did. We can say you guys don't understand how it used to be, and like we all equally, we don't understand necessarily what it is that they go through. Um, just be diligent, show an interest in what they're doing. You just said it yourself, right? Don't let, mom could have easily just said, oh, okay, it's just somebody you're playing games with, and gone about it. You have to stop and investigate. Okay. Push it a little bit and see what you can do. For anybody looking to find me, so our website is Protechtion, but it's spelled Protechtion.me. So it's protection.me. Tells you on there everything about what it is that we do, the courses that we have available. The way it works with us is our first course is an upfront purchase, very minimal. And then it's only $9 a month thereafter to get full access to all of our courses, our entire course library. Everything right shortly is we're going to be delivering everything as well through a mobile app. So parents got it right there. They get access to all of our resources. And the things that we just talked about, like when you're trying to have this conversation with your kids, like we have conversation scripts that parents can use. So if you have kids that are 9 to 11 years old, you would simply download our 9 to 11-year-old conversation script. You can use it exactly as is, or you can just use it as a parent. You might go in there sweating going, how do we even begin to have this conversation with my kid? Read through our conversation script, get some ideas, go into it with a game plan, be prepared to answer their questions, and go at it. And when we're talking about how you use technology in a house, like we offer family agreements. Okay. Simple thing, put in your family agreement. All devices are off at 7:30 p.m. and they go to the bedtime charging station or the nighttime charging station or the central starting station, whatever you want to call it. Right. And when you have an agreement in place and you include your kids on what goes into that agreement, you're creating that winning recipe, because they're a part of the decision making that's going on as well. They're empowered to make these decisions, and then they're empowered to keep themselves safe online.
Awesome, awesome. And so again, this has been episode 6 of the Darklaw Dominion Mental Health series on childhood exploitation with Mr. Dave Miller. It's
You
been a
too.
pleasure speaking with you, Dave. Um, uh, Before we go, I just want to encourage all the viewers out there, especially if you're a parent, or even if you're not a parent yourself, you have, nieces, nephews, cousins, best friends, if you work at a daycare, if you're around kids, know kids that, if you live by elementary school, I encourage all the viewers to get educated on, childhood exploitation and anything in regards to social media and technology exploitation. Also encourage you to, speak with the kids, empower the kids. And like I said, if um, everyone is just a little bit more educated and aware on these issues, then, as a society, we can grow and we can, call it out and, put a stop to this, proactively rather than reactively. And so, been a pleasure. Until next time on the Crib Dominion podcast, it's been a pleasure sharing with you all viewing here today,
Amazing. Thank
and
you for
hope you
having me.
guys have a great night. Thanks, Dave. You too. Thanks.